Have you ever heard of a place so vast and unexplored that we've mapped more of Mars than we have of it? A place so deep that if you dropped Mount Everest into it, the peak would still be underwater? And now, imagine that this place might hold the key to saving the planet or destroying it. That place is the bottom of the ocean. And just sitting there in complete darkness is something that looks like burned potatoes, small, round, blackened rocks scattered like ancient ruins across the seabed. They're called polymetallic nodules. These aren't just rocks, they're worth trillions, and they're the target of a brand new gold rush. But here's the twist. To mine these riches, we may have to sacrifice one of the last truly untouched ecosystems on Earth. Because unlike gold or oil, these nodules lie beneath 4 kilometers of crushing ocean pressure, in zones that no country really owns and barely anyone understands. And the race to get to them is already underway. Somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, between Hawaii and Mexico, lies a region of the seafloor that's bigger than the entire United States. It's called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, and it might just be the most valuable stretch of ocean you've never heard of. Underwater vehicles have filmed footage of this alien world, a silent, endless plain covered with thousands of strange dark spheres, polymetallic nodules. Each one is no bigger than a fist, yet inside, they contain the exact metals needed to power electric vehicles, wind turbines, solar panels, and the smartphones and laptops you and I are probably using right now. Metals that are getting harder and harder to source from land. Metals that are increasingly controlled by a handful of powerful countries. So the logic is simple. If we can't get them on land, maybe we should go get them from the sea. And that's exactly what's starting to happen. Right now, private companies, state-backed ventures, and a handful of powerful nations are preparing giant underwater robots to crawl across the ocean floor and harvest these nodules by the millions. If that sounds like science fiction, it's not. It's already begun. The companies behind this new frontier say deep-sea mining is the ethical alternative to land-based mining. No mountaintop removal, no deforestation, no toxic tailing ponds, no child labor. They say, look, we can just vacuum these things up off the ocean floor, like apples from a field, and power the world without wrecking the planet. But the truth? It's way more complicated. The ocean floor is one of the least studied ecosystems on Earth. And once you disturb it, there's no undo button. Entire species live down there that we haven't even discovered. Ecosystems that took millions of years to evolve could be destroyed in a matter of days. And yet, the world needs these metals, now more than ever. This is a story about geopolitics, climate urgency, and raw economic ambition. It's about China, the US, Russia, and even a tiny Pacific island nation that's found itself at the center of a trillion-dollar decision, Nauru. And it's not just a story about rocks underwater, it's about how the choices we make today might shape the world for the next 100 years. So, buckle up, because the race to mine the bottom of the ocean has already begun, and we're all part of it, whether we like it or not. What are polymetallic nodules? At first glance, they look like something you'd toss aside on a beach. Small, lumpy, dark gray rocks, about the size of a potato. But beneath that rough, crusty surface lies the building blocks of the future. Here's the crazy part. These nodules form at a pace so slow, it's almost impossible to imagine. Over millions of years, minerals in seawater, like iron and manganese, begin to crystallize around a tiny object. It could be a shark tooth, a fishbone, even a grain of sand. Layer by layer, the metals accumulate, like rings on a tree. And after about 1 million years, you've got a nodule. Let's break down why these metals are so valuable. Nickel is essential for high-performance batteries, especially those used in electric cars. It helps boost energy density and battery lifespan. Cobalt provides thermal stability. Without it, batteries are more likely to overheat or fail. And currently, over 70% of the world's cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, often under inhumane conditions. Copper is used in wiring, motors, and just about every electronic device you can think of. No copper, no electricity. Manganese helps strengthen steel, prevent corrosion, and is used in battery formulations too. These four elements are essential to the global push for renewable energy, electrification, and green infrastructure. We're not talking about luxury metals like gold and silver. We're talking about the guts of a functioning modern world. Why now? The forces driving the rush to mine the deep sea. So, we've known about polymetallic nodules for decades. Scientists discovered them back in the 19th century. During deep ocean expeditions in the 1960s and 70s, they were sampled, studied, and admired. But no one seriously considered mining them, not until now. Why? Because the technology wasn't ready, the demand wasn't urgent, and frankly, no one had the political will to go digging through the most hostile environment on the planet. But fast forward to today, and everything has changed. The demand for battery metals has exploded. The climate crisis is no longer a future scenario, it's our present, and some of the biggest industries on Earth are desperate for a solution. In short, the world is running out of clean, ethical ways to power itself. And the ocean? Well, it suddenly looks like a treasure chest. Let's break it down. Right now, countries all over the world are trying to electrify everything. Gas-powered cars are being phased out, coal power plants are being shut down, wind farms and solar grids are being built at scale, energy storage is becoming a strategic priority. And all of this, every electric car, every wind turbine, every backup battery system, depends on metals. A lot of them. The International Energy Agency estimates that demand for critical minerals like nickel, cobalt, and copper will quadruple by 2040 if we stay on track for net zero emissions. But here's the problem. We're not mining enough, and the mines we do have are causing problems. Take cobalt, for example. Roughly 70% of the world's cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and a significant portion of that is mined by hand, often by children, in incredibly unsafe conditions. Then there's nickel. Many of the world's largest nickel mines are in Indonesia, the Philippines, and Russia. They produce mountains of waste, pollute rivers, and release enormous amounts of carbon. Copper? Same story. It requires huge amounts of water and energy to extract and process. And as high-grade ores get harder to find, miners are digging deeper into more fragile ecosystems. And here's where things get geopolitical. Because after you mine these metals, you need to refine them. And today, China dominates global refining, especially for cobalt, rare earths, and battery-grade materials. In other words, the West, particularly the US and Europe, is incredibly dependent on a single rival superpower to build the technologies that will define the future. This isn't just about mining. It's about energy independence, national security, strategic autonomy. And that's why the deep sea is starting to look very, very attractive. Enter companies like The Metals Company, a Canadian startup that's become the poster child of the deep sea mining movement. Their pitch is simple. We can harvest metals from the ocean with less impact than mining on land. No people at risk, no forests cleared, no water polluted. Instead, a fleet of underwater robots will gently vacuum the nodules from the seafloor, send them up riser pipes to a ship, and process them in a closed-loop system. And the result? Tons of clean, high-grade metals with a smaller environmental footprint. It sounds futuristic, but the technology already exists, and trials are already happening. Behind the scenes, money is pouring in. Major oil and gas companies are investing in subsea technologies. Defense contractors are eyeing the strategic value of seafloor metals. Sovereign wealth funds and billionaire investors are betting on the next big resource boom. Because this isn't just about saving the planet, It's about being first. Whoever figures out how to mine the deep sea at scale could reshape the global supply chain and walk away with unfathomable profits. So why now? If there's one thing you should know about the bottom of the ocean, it's this: no one owns it, but everyone wants a piece. And that makes it the perfect place for a 21st century power struggle, one that's drawing in superpowers, corporations, and tiny island nations with almost nothing in common. The deep sea might be dark and silent, but the race to mine it is loud, messy, and global. Let's break down the players. China, the sleeping giant. First up, China, the quiet but dominant force in this game. China holds more exploration contracts for the deep sea than any other nation. Its state-backed companies have heavily invested in subsea mining technology, underwater robotics, and processing infrastructure. And here's the real play. China already controls a majority of the world's critical mineral refining capacity. So if it secures the raw materials as well, it could dominate the entire supply chain, from seabed to smartphone. In many ways, China isn't rushing, it's preparing, strategizing, building capacity while the rest of the world debates ethics. And if anyone has the budget, the political will, and the long-term strategy to win this race, it's them. Then there's the United States, Canada, Germany, France, and the UK, all trying to catch up. But there's a problem. The US isn't even a member of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Ocean, or UNCLOS, the international treaty that governs ocean resources. That means American companies can't apply directly for deep-sea mining licenses under current law. They have to partner with other countries, often smaller ones, that are part of the system. Canada, meanwhile, is in a strange position. It hosts the metals company, but its own government has banned deep-sea mining in national waters. Talk about mixed signals. Germany, France, and Norway have expressed concern over the ecological risks, but still hold exploratory licenses. In short, the West is torn, trying to balance environmental responsibility with economic necessity. Russia is developing its own mining tech, largely in secret. It's hard to say how far along they are, but one thing is clear: they see the strategic value. Japan and South Korea are also investing, not just for metals, but to secure future access and tech leadership in the undersea economy. In Asia, the deep sea isn't just about climate. It's about energy security, supply chain independence, and regional power. Now, let's talk about the most surprising player of all, Nauru, a tiny island nation in the Pacific with just 10,000 people and almost no natural resources left. In the 20th century, Nauru was briefly one of the richest countries per capita thanks to phosphate mining. But the phosphate ran out. The wealth dried up. And now, Nauru is heavily reliant on aid, imports, and temporary deals, like hosting refugee centers. But in 2021, Nauru made a bold move. In partnership with the metals company, Nauru invoked something called the 2-year rule under the International Seabed Authority. This legal clause basically said, hey, ISA, you've had years to come up with mining regulations. You now have 2 years to finish them, or we start mining, with or without your full rulebook. That deadline? It expired in July 2023. Which means we're now in uncharted territory. Nauru, through its sponsorship of the metals company, has essentially forced the global conversation. And critics are furious, saying this tiny nation, desperate for income, has backed the world into a dangerous corner. But for Nauru, this isn't about power, it's about survival. Rising sea levels threaten their future. They have no more phosphate, no major industries. Mining the ocean might be their only shot at long-term stability. So is Nauru reckless, or just doing what every powerful country has already done, exploiting resources to survive? The truth is, the race to mine the ocean isn't just about who has the best tech.
It's about who's willing to act first and who can navigate the legal gray zones. And when the rules are unclear, the smallest nations can sometimes make the biggest moves. At this point in the story, it all sounds like something out of a science fiction film. Massive robotic harvesters crawling across the seafloor, sucking up trillions of dollars worth of minerals to power the future. But there's a part of the story we haven't fully told yet. The part that takes place in total darkness. In a world more alien than the surface of Mars, where life survives without sunlight, and where one wrong move could wipe out ecosystems we haven't even discovered. Because if we decide to mine the deep sea, we won't just be harvesting rocks. We'll be stepping into one of the most fragile and least understood environments on Earth. The deep sea is a mystery. Here's the thing most people don't realize. We've mapped just 20% of the global ocean floor in detail. And when it comes to deep sea biology, we've barely scratched the surface. The Clarion-Clipperton Zone, for example, the area everyone wants to mine, is home to a unique ecosystem. We're talking tiny, soft-bodied creatures living on or inside the nodules themselves, filter feeders and sponges that rely on stable sediment, bacteria that form the base of deep-sea food chains, possibly even undiscovered species with strange bioluminescent features. These organisms live in extreme conditions, freezing temperatures, high pressure, zero light, and they're perfectly adapted to it. But they're not adapted to survive mining machines the size of tanks dragging across the seabed. And once you destroy their habitat, they don't just move, they vanish. One of the biggest concerns scientists have is something called sediment plumes. When a mining robot vacuums up nodules, it disturbs the seafloor, kicking up huge clouds of fine sediment. These plumes don't just settle near the mining site. They can travel for dozens, even hundreds of kilometers, carried by deep-sea currents.
And as they drift, they choke filter feeders, clog delicate structures, and interfere with reproduction cycles of marine species. Worse still, these plumes don't just affect the seafloor. The material that gets pumped back into the ocean from surface ships, known as the dewatering discharge, can rise up into mid-water ecosystems, affecting life across multiple layers of the ocean. In essence, a mining operation might disturb far more than just the spot where it operates. And because deep-sea life is so slow-growing, recovery, if it happens at all, could take centuries. Over 700 scientists from more than 40 countries have signed a formal statement calling for a pause on deep-sea mining. Their argument is clear. We simply don't have enough data to know what the full consequences will be. Unlike land ecosystems, we can't easily study or monitor the deep sea in real time. Damage done could remain invisible until it's too late to fix. They're not saying never, they're saying not yet. Because in the rush to solve the climate crisis, we may be creating another, one that we can't reverse. It's easy to think of the deep sea as empty, as nothing but mud and metal. But that mindset has led us to make devastating mistakes before. We used to think old-growth forests were infinite. We used to dump waste into rivers, assuming nature would take care of it. We overfished oceans, assuming they'd replenish themselves forever. Now, we face a similar blind spot, 5 kilometers below the waves. And here's the most haunting part. Some scientists believe deep-sea microbes could hold secrets to new medicines, biotechnologies, even answers to how life began on Earth. What if the cure for the next pandemic is growing right now on a nodule we scrape away? What if the key to carbon sequestration is buried in a seafloor sponge we never bothered to study? Mining companies say they'll minimize the damage. They say it'll be more sustainable than land-based mining. Maybe they're right. But maybe they're underestimating what we're putting at risk.
Because once the machines start rolling, there's no going back. And what we stand to lose might be far more valuable than any metal buried beneath the waves. Let's imagine for a second that you discovered a massive, priceless treasure, but it was located in a part of the world that technically doesn't belong to anyone. There are no fences, no flags, no governments patrolling the area. Just open sea, stretching for miles in every direction. So, who gets to claim it? Because while mining the land is governed by nations, permits, and policies, the deep sea is another story entirely. Here's the thing, most of the world's oceans don't actually belong to any one country. They fall under a legal area called the high seas, and the seafloor beneath them is known as the area. This area, which includes places like the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, is legally considered the common heritage of humanity. That's not just poetic, it's actually an international law. It means the resources found there are supposed to benefit everyone on Earth, not just the rich, powerful, or fast-moving. To manage this, the United Nations established a body in 1994 called the International Seabed Authority, or ISA. Its job? To write the rules, to protect the environment, and to ensure fair access for all countries, big and small. There's also the question of fairness. If the seabed is the common heritage of humankind, then how do we ensure the profits don't just go to corporations and wealthy nations? How do we share the benefits with developing countries, with indigenous communities, with those who won't see a cent from these operations but might face the environmental consequences? There's talk of a global royalty system, where a percentage of revenue is shared across nations. But how that would be enforced, and whether it would actually help those in need, is still unclear. And that raises a deeper question. Should we even be putting a price tag on something that doesn't belong to anyone, or maybe belongs to all of us? The bottom of the ocean isn't lawless, but it's not exactly protected either. The thing is, the future of deep-sea mining hasn't been decided yet. As of now, no commercial mining has begun at scale. The ISA is still debating. Countries are still posturing. The technology, while close, is still being refined, which means we still have time. Time to do more research. Time to have honest global discussions. Time to create real safeguards. Or to pause entirely and consider alternatives. Some countries, like Germany, France, and New Zealand, have called for a moratorium on deep-sea mining. Others are pushing forward. Private companies are spending millions.
The future is metallic.
Island nations like Nauru are betting their futures. And public awareness? Still incredibly low. And yet, decisions being made right now could affect the oceans for centuries to come. Here's what some scientists and engineers are proposing instead. Urban mining, extracting valuable metals from e-waste like old phones and laptops. Battery recycling, building better infrastructure to reuse rare materials. New chemistries, developing batteries that rely less on scarce minerals like cobalt. Circular design, creating tech that's easier to disassemble, reuse, and rebuild. None of these are silver bullets. But they show that innovation doesn't have to mean destruction. Maybe we don't need to go to the ocean floor, at least not yet. Maybe we need to fix the way we think about progress. So, the next time you hear someone say that deep-sea mining is the answer to clean energy, ask them what else it might cost. Ask them if we're moving too fast. And ask them who profits and who pays. Because the ocean may be deep, but the consequences of mining it could go even deeper. If this story made you think, or if you learned something new, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your take.